Okay. I think we have YouTube, and I think we have Twitch, and I think... Okay. I think everything is properly set up now. I have a picture over here, and then let me go double check this one, not this one, this one. Okay. Neat. Okay, so what I wanted to do today was start to explain what I've been working on with the Trickedex. And so, like, I don't want to go too big picture, but I do want to give an idea of, like, overall, like, why this is relevant. So the Trickedex, in a big picture sense, is trying to be the like end-all be-all app for tricking and have all of the features that you can dream of when you think of like a Pokemon style Pokedex, but for tricking. You'd be able to get quick information about all of the tricks. It would be fully searchable. You'd be able to view these things, like the different examples as far as like clips, user uploaded clips. And we actually have a really fantastic, section completely dedicated to these tricks in 3 dimensions. Right now it's just called the sandbox. And once it loads, you'll be able to see. And so the super cool thing about having something like this is if you want to study a trick, you can view it from angles and really get a sense of what's going on in it. And you can slow it down way slower than you're used to with, your average frame rate. And personally, I just think this is super cool. And we have a pretty decent library. We have a few different trickers in here, and each of them have their own different tricks that are on them. And so this is just one side of it, though. The idea is to eventually have a generative aspect to where you can create these new movements out of just like playing with the different pieces that go into a trick, and like over here in the theory, like it's building up these different concepts that are commonly used within tricking and trying to just lay it all out in one place so that you can make sense of it. And so that led us to creating this like session review system. And that allows us to go in and label these different samplers. And so this is a sampler that Stephen French uploaded a quarter of a century, and we went through and labeled all of these different things. It pops up as you're watching it, and then down here is a list of all of the tricks or combos rather that are inside of this sampler. And you could just watch it normally, or you could jump directly to a particular trick and it will start in and loop that trick. That way it's easy to study. And And in doing this, we realized that having a system that is completely labeled gives a unique position to be able to start developing a hierarchy of tricks and who performed it the best, which like a lot of the times there's a question asked in the various groups surrounding tricking, where it's like, oh, who show me the best version of this, or how many people have done this move, is it rare or is it super common? And we've never really had a good library that can provide for that. And that's one of the things that the Trickedex can really help with. And so building on top of that labeling system, which in and of itself is super useful to be able to just like have a searchable list of all of the tricks and combos, and so like here, I'll take us into development. So this isn't quite finished, which is why it's not in the production version yet. But I've been working on this search feature that has all of the different tricks that are currently in the database, and each of these are going to take us to a particular trick that basically just spits out its trick info. But more than that, it shows all of the different combos that trick is in, and some examples. That was a bad example to choose. Let's go to cork, and these examples aren't like properly labeled because it's just for the sake of development. But do I not have one for cork either? Is it double cork? I had some in here that definitely have examples that I would like to show. Oh no, I'm a little annoyed. Stand by for a moment. You can see if I can get this working. I have one maybe on aerial. Give me just a second to go and look at something real quick. See what I broke. And this is why I haven't released too much about it, is because it's still very much in development, and there's quite a lot that is going into all of these pieces. But we're just about to the point where I need your help, honestly, because we need more data in the system for some of the next steps. Let's do. The cork swipe has one. Maybe it's just on the combo page that I actually put this. No? Oh. Well, that is most frustrating. But the general idea is that under these, that I need to click one of these. No. Yeah, these are supposed to, you can imagine that like under one of these examples there's a piece of clip data that it's basically just a video player that has, you know, which user did it, and it will jump you straight into that particular clip. I don't want to get too off in the weeds spending time on that right now. Because what I really wanted to focus in on was this. So within this user profile is what we're effectively on. Is like if you were friends with Steven, or just if you found him through the leaderboards or some other way of getting to this profile page, this is what you would see. And this page is going to have some more information, but for right now we can just hop over into here and see the session stats, and this has a list of the different samplers that are in here. This one hasn't been reviewed yet, but this one has, and we can see just a quick overview of its overall points for the session, the sampler name, and a graph of the different combos that were done over the course of the session. When we come in here, this is the same graph above that we were just looking at, with some breakdown of the information inside of that session. So it has 39 unique tricks with 10 unique transitions. Double back with 4 points was its greatest trick, or like its highest point value. I'm probably going to change this into a bar chart because these are kind of hard to correlate. But this is a breakdown of all of the different transitions, the percentage that you used each transition over the course of the whole session. This is your invert to kick ratio. Over here we have your execution average. So this is the average of execution score that was given to you for each of these, and we'll get to that in a second. And then density. So density is basically like your average trick value. So if you do, you know, 3 tricks that all have 2 points, you're going to have a density of 2, because that was the average across it. But if you do 3 tricks and 2 of them are 1s and 1 of them's a 2, then you'd have something more like a 1.5 as your score, because that would skew your score downward, having those lower point values. But using that type of averaging, it allows for us to get a quick glance of, you know, what level of tricks are on average being used in the combo. You know, are on average these tricks pushing into the 3 to 5 point range, or are they on the, you know, 0 to 1 range? And then we do the same thing for transitions. Since transitions get a much smaller point value as their base score, that we separate trick and transition into their own densities and then recombine them, so that way it doesn't skew downward too much, and that gives us a better average score, or an average density for the overall sampler that we're looking at. Now within each of these clips, if you click on the line chart for this particular combo, you can see more information about how it's breaking down. And we can see specifically for this combo what was its density. So the density up in this upper section, this is for the entire sampler. The density in these lower sections is specifically for this combo that we're looking at here. And this combo So first, let's go through each of these pieces. So up at the top, we have our overall score. This is a combination of all 5 of these different elements. So we have our power, our variety, the execution, our chain score, and a raw bonus. So the power score is the base point value for each trick and transition across the combo added up. We then have a variety score and a chain score that are calculated, and bonuses are added. This execution score is something that users can actually interact with. So if we are watching this particular clip and we wanted to rate it, we can come in here and we can, based on how well we think that he did it, we can come in and rate it. You can give it a negative rating, which will impact the user's score. So, be respectful with that. But that way, we can get a sort of user feedback from the community on which clips we think are the best. And having those clips rated is going to be useful to help newcomers come in and know which things to study versus which things might lead them down an astray path. Because like not every clip that we've ever uploaded of our tricks is going to be good and is going to be, worth studying. And if we can help make it easy for the average person who's wanting to learn tricking to figure those things out, I think it would definitely benefit the community and the sport as a whole. So that's how that execution score works. And right now, and we'll get into the actual breakdown in the code here in a little bit and really explain everything that's going on in it. But the execution average is currently based off of the power and the variety score put together. So your execution that you're contributing is some percentage of 0 to 100 effectively. And everyone who rates a particular clip, all of those averages are then averaged together. So we have 0 to 100% value that's then multiplied times the power and the variety score. And that gives us this actual execution total. And the reason that we chose the power and the variety is the power alone wasn't giving quite enough of a boost to the edge cases where, some tricks should be, or combos rather, should be close enough that, if someone does their combo better, it should beat out something that is slightly more difficult because of how close they are. And so to make sure that we have the range for that, as well as the fact that most of the execution that you're looking for when there is variety involved is how well did they execute the variety that they were trying to add to the combo. Meaning kicks, grabs, shapes, touchdowns, things like that. How cleanly did they execute the variations on the base trick? And then chains. So let's go back to full screen view of this. So chains, that's what these little gray bars are. So we can see that we start our chain right here, and you can ignore the way that this is put together for now. There's some, we'll choose a different one. Let's choose, oh, he did it for all of those. There we go. Here's one that doesn't start chilly. So for this one, total chain score of 34.54. So it starts out with a punch, and this punch right here is where you're effectively putting your first chain together. So this is where we're starting to see a chain score building on these tricks, and that's what this little CX is. This is the 0.15 and 0.0 or 0.30 are the multiplier of the chain score. This value right here, and there's going to probably be an update to this display to make it make a little bit more sense. But for now, this value is the chain score multiplied by this base score plus any buffs. And you can see when a buff comes in right here on this multiplier. So we can, this 0.15 we're getting off of this transitions multiplier value. And this transitions multiplier value, since we're continuing our chain, is then being added together, which is what makes this 0.15 turn into this 0.3 right here. But then, because this is a double full, and we're going into another double full, come back, we are actually getting a massive multiplier on our base score, plus some other behind the scenes multipliers. And the reason that we're getting such a massive multiplier on this one is partially to solve the problem of making dub beat dub sing dub. And that was something that Towels had brought to me as like, we need to make this happen in the point system. I don't know what the algorithm looks like, but that's the task at hand. So I started working on that, and I think we came up with a really good system for how to handle it, because it sort of applies some rules across many different areas of tricking. And we did a similar thing with the variety. So you actually build variety multipliers as the combo goes on. Bonuses are mostly built off of how you end your combo. Meaning, are you ending it in a like a double or a variation? Box cutters get or like full hyperhook, cork hyperhook, any type of hyperhook, I believe, that has at least one rotation would get this sort of bonus at the end. And that's just sort of like, are you finishing your combos in a more exciting and flashy way, or are they just fizzling out? Because I feel like ultimately the combos that are really exciting to watch, and the people who are really pushing the elite level, their combos tend to have this like increasing chart. Like for example, let's just go over to, let's go look at this show say sampler. So a lot of these combos, they have their big boost towards the end, because he's finishing a lot of these combos with larger moves, and that the combos that are being generated, like when you start pushing into this tier of tricks where you're doing double flips, and there's like dub trip, snatch cannon swing, into gainer flash, redirect, TDR swing, triple cork. Like, these are just ridiculous combos, and they should be getting these ridiculous boosts because of how complex it is to do some of these things, especially in a combo. And that's what we're trying to capture, in a sense, is to make it easy to see, like, okay, like this pink line, like a lot of Shosei's combos in this sampler, all of them actually are approaching this pink line. Whereas, and like this is the blue line, like take note of this. And then when we come over back to Steven's video, we can see this Steven is just not registering in that pink line domain, and that's no knock on Steven. That pink line is difficult to get to. There aren't a bunch of us that are going to be pushing up into that pink line. A lot of people are happy with this, and they should be, with just, hovering below the blue line or right around it, because that already is, these are still difficult combos. Like this is a great sampler. He did a lot of really good things, especially for, when it was. Nowadays things are so much crazier, and it just continues to get wilder and wilder, which is part of why we would love to have something like the Trickedex to be able to capture some of these things and make it easy to, look these things up. Oh, it's this one. To look these things up and have, searchable with, all of the information right at your fingertips. Or at least that's the hope. Because when we have all of this data put together, that's what we can use and to start training some AI models that will be able to analyze in hopefully real time eventually, but like to analyze your videos, raw session clips, and then be able to chop it up and label it with the appropriate tricks. And now it would just make editing samplers and, just keeping track of your progress and your clips that much easier. And it's kind of weird the way that, like, we have to build a system like this to I mean, you don't have to, but this was the way that I chose to do it. Building a system like this allows for us to label all of this data that we can then use to analyze and like create a training set to then put into an AI model, so that way you can then just upload your sampler and then it will automatically analyze it. So basically we get to remove ourselves out of the manual process that we're doing right now of, going into one of these samplers and breaking down all of the different things that were in here. But this is something that, like, I've always wanted something like this to exist. And I understand now why no one's built it, because it was really difficult. So, like, when I came into this, it started as just, like, I was writing, and I still am, not quite finished with it, but writing a book about tricking and all of the fantastic things that it has to offer. Which led me down this path of, like, we need this like fully formed Trickedex to exist, and that led me to teaching myself how to code and building a lot of this shit, which has been super fun. But to get back on topic, because I veered off there for a second, the last two pieces that we haven't really talked about are these numbers down here, and then we'll get into the actual code of how these things get put together for this total score, and like what criteria each of these needs to meet to, you know, start. The way we've been referring to it is like cracking out, because it's like some of these combos are just cracked with how much the score goes up, but for the most part it seems to be in line with how ridiculously difficult a lot of these tricks and combos end up being. So let me do some housekeeping, look around, make sure no one started trying to talk to me. It does not look like it. Looks like I'm the only person watching me. But maybe someone will watch this in the future and it will give them a full breakdown of what's going on. Yeah. So, getting back on track. So what's going on in the background over here? Let's switch screens to the dangerous display. I call it that because it just shows my whole desktop. Okay. So let's make this a little bit bigger. Okay, hopefully that's fairly readable on your screens. So what we're looking at right now is the actual code. It's a little laggy because it's a pretty big file, and I have a bunch of other. Let's actually do this. Let's close others, and we're going to close all, and close all, and close that too. Okay, so now we're just looking at this. So this is basically like we grab these totals and save them on our session data when we're saving the session review, you know, like when all of the information has been input. So okay, so we have a trick count and a chain map and a variety map. These are what we use to store all of the eligible extra points, basically, that get calculated, and it makes it easy to display it elsewhere. Here we have our things that are chain breakers. So we have a redirect, a hook, a round, a carry through, a hop, and a bound. And the reason that each of these things break the chain is because there is some form of, like, effectively a pause or an adjustment step where you can fully change the direction, or like effectively catch your breath. Like you could basically, you know, in a lot of these, you could effectively stop and then finish out using one of these tricks or transitions, and that's why it breaks a chain. And when we say hook and round, we aren't talking about any of the variations that include hook or round. We're just talking about a plain, like, you know, on the ground round kick and then recycle, or hook kick and then recycle, where there's effectively you're doing the same sort of a on ground pivot with your foot as a carry through would. Okay, so the first thing that we do to generate these scores is we create a composition score. And all of this code, if you care, is available on my GitHub if you wanted to like actually go and peruse it and like read through line by line. I'm just going to sort of overview the general concepts here, and then we'll do a quick write-up of these things in plain text to make it make more sense. But I've always been curious of like how things work, and I figured since I'm building a thing, might as well tell people how it works. So for this full composition, this is effectively, it's going to end up as an array with a bunch of different values in it. And each of these values, so this final score is just like local to this composition generator. And that's what allows us to get the certain bonuses to take place down the line. So it starts off with the comp score, which just counts how many twists, full 360-degree rotations are in the trick. And then if it's a hyperhook and has a, so if there's a rotation and a kick, or a late rounds also count as well. So for either of those, we add a little modifier to the base composition score. So for example, a double twist is going to be a 2. For reasons that might make sense to math people, a 1 will, like using 0 for the multiplication down the line screws things up. So we just default to everything, even if it doesn't have rotation, gets a base of 1. There's some other things that sort of account for that to make sure that like gainer and cork aren't equivalent because one has rotation, one doesn't. So then for double flips, you get a big ol' boost in your composition score, which will impact greatly the overall score as far as like modifiers goes. And then the transition, each of the different transition types have different composition scores that then get calculated into their totals. So let's get into the actual like chain calculation and how this is happening. So, and let's actually pull this back up because it might be relevant to see like a chain like, maybe this one could be good. No, it doesn't have any breaks. I want one that has like a redirect in it. I think we could go to Steven. Stevens have some redirects. Okay, where is one? Reversal. Oh, here we go. Well, that starts with 1. It doesn't go into 1. Yeah, let's go look at Andrew Court Sampler real quick and see. Pretty sure he has one in Um, do, do, do. Here, I think. No? Here we go. Here's a pretty good example. So he's building his chain score up here. So he gets a modifier from that onto here. But because he uses the redirect, it completely kills his chain score. And so this snafu doesn't get any of the points. And let's see, is there another one? Most of the time, he's doing really good combos. Okay, so to continue explaining, so the way it works is we have this function that does our chain calculation, and I also have another one that does a calculation for variety. We'll get into that in a second. But the way it works is we're just checking right here if we need to break the chain or if we need to like skip out of here because we're not in the right type for the chain calculation. And then down at the bottom, because a lot of the times we end up starting here. Because we don't have for our initial value a chain at that particular number. Because the way it works is for each combo you can create multiple chains, and breaking one automatically creates a new one until you break it, or if you don't do anything that consists of chaining. So, most things chain. Like we mentioned a second ago, there are some explicit chain breakers: redirect, hook, round, carry through, hop, and bound. But so we start down here at the bottom creating this chain object. And this is mostly just for me, but to explain how it works, it has the chain, which is just some extra information. Usually it's an array with the details. It has a multiplier, a count, and a name, which is usually just the name of the transition that starts it. And this multiplier is the main thing that is going to be important for us moving forward. Down here are just some values that are being pushed into another object that I'm using to display these later on. So, what makes us get our chain to get these different values? Like, why does something like this have such a cracked out chain versus a similarly long combo down here doesn't have nearly that type of chain? Well, here's a good example. So we're not creating our chain until deep into it, so we're not getting these full benefits. We're also not doing any higher rotations, which would really contribute to a much more cracked score. So, going through this. So it starts with, and we're using our full composition that I just went over how we create. So those different, ones and twos, and, if it's a hyperhook or certain other moves, then, you have an extra 0.5, which is going to contribute to pushing you over the ledge in certain cases. and giving you a much higher score than someone else. Not sure if anybody's watching this. It looks like it says I have a viewer, so if you have any questions or I'm not explaining things clearly while you're here, drop some messages in chat and let me know how I could explain it better. But so we have a couple of variables that we set up top, and there's probably a refactor that could be done to this code to make it better. So we have our decrease, which is if our next, so we're starting from where we are. If the trick after us is smaller than the trick before us, meaning we went from a double cork to a single cork, or from a cork to a gainer, or from a triple cork down to a gainer, or what have you. This is going to be true in those cases. Our comp subtotal, this is our composition score of those tricks. For any multipliers in a chain, it gets affected by the trick that came before it. So if you have a higher tier of trick that you're doing into a smaller trick, you'll actually get some boost from that higher trick into the lower trick. And same with vice versa, from a smaller trick to the bigger trick. So let's say we have a double cork in one and a single cork in the other, then our total right here is going to be 3. Now, in order for our bonus to take place, we actually need to be over 3.5, which is where that 0.5 right here comes in to kick box cutters and certain other tricks over that threshold. And that allows us to, give out some bonus scores, or a bonus multiplier, rather. So, starting out for each iteration, so we're on a transition in one of these tricks. So we look at this first one, and since nothing came before it, I'm the first one, I don't get to apply any of these. So moving into the second one, we increase the count, and then we add the object, which is our current transition that we're looking at. We add its multiplier to our current chain's multiplier. So for our first chain, this is where we're getting this 0.5. It's coming into this one. Then from here, we are adding our 0.6 to our 0.5 to get this 0.14 on the chain modifier, moving into this one. And so each time that's going to increase as you add more and more tricks. So moving down here, so we're doing our first check, and this is double checking to make sure we actually, let's see, I had notes. Okay, this is if your last trick is bigger than your next, then there's a slight nerf that is apparently no longer being applied. So I'm actually going to comment this out because we're not using it. So my apologies for the slight confusion there. We are doing this bonus, which, if you remember from before, is if our comp subtotal, meaning the two tricks surrounding the transition we're looking at, are worth more than 3.5 in the system's eyes, as their composition score. And this has nothing to do with their point value. That will come into play here in just a second. and I can explain how point value is calculated then. So this is a touchdown nerf. So if you're doing any type of touchdown in your trick between two tricks, because a lot of the times these touchdowns end up getting used as ways to sort of block and generate power. As long as you're not including a rotation in that, then we give you a nerf to your multiplier, which brings it down to an eighth of its original score, which can sometimes be frustrating. But we think that in doing this, it helps to balance out certain combos that we really wanted to see in a particular order in the system. So we have two functions right here that I'm using to get the current multiplier and get the current trick's point value. And this is where the point value buff comes in. So we have this function right here. It starts with a comp diff, which is the composition score difference. So we start with our comp subtotal, and then we subtract the last trick from the next trick. And what this does is, if we're increasing our value, this minus a negative gives us a bonus, and pushes our comp subtotal up a bit higher, which is what we're later using to multiply in with these final multipliers. So this first one is checking if we met our bonus, which is the 3.5 bonus, which the way that we internally have been talking about it, like me and Towels, that's like the dub bonus, but it includes a few other things. And so that gives you your current multiplier, so whatever this naturally increasing number ended up being, and the comp subtotal, and that's multiplied together. And now remember, this is just the multiplier, so this isn't our final score or anything. We'll get our trick point value down here, which there's some boosts to that in a second. So if our last trick was bigger than a 1, meaning it was a dub or higher, then we get a similar boost. This might actually, I might be able to code this in a better way. A lot of this was written late at night, but it works. So anyways, and then if we don't get those bonuses for our multiplier, we just give back our current chain's multiplier. Now, if we're decreasing and we're smaller than a dub, then we're just gonna get our point value to multiply. And that's also the case if we don't hit our bonus. But if we do hit our bonus, our point value gets a 3 times multiplier. Why 3? Because that was the number that I needed to plug into the equation to make sure that dub was always going to be dub saying dub. And a variety of other specific trick cases that Towels and I had talked about, because we tried a ton of different numbers in there, and having those multipliers compound together is really what gives us that final nice balance that we feel like the chain score system has. Balance being maybe not the right word for it because it's cracked, but it's cracked in just the right way, we think. So here we're just actually calling these functions. So for this particular trick that we're in, we can get those right values, and then these are what's actually used inside of here. So the current multiplier is this CX number right here, and the total multiplier is this trick point value times current multiplier. And we just go through the list, and each time we add the trick as long as it doesn't meet one of our breaking cases, and that is how we generate our chain score. So hopefully that made sense. This is probably going to be up as a VOD, like video on demand, just to watch afterwards. Such a weird word when you say it out loud. Anyways, you'll be able to watch this later probably. So if you have any questions about this, if I didn't make any sense, just let me know, and I will try and clarify those things. So let's talk about the variety calculation and how that gets brought into things. So if you're looking at the, let's get some coffee. Let's check on the Twitch chat. No one's watching still, but that's totally fine. It's for me more than it is for everybody else. So starting with, so full tricks is an array of all of the trick information that we want. And we're just double checking, making sure that we have a trick and not a transition, because while the chain score and the chain multipliers are based off of transitions and they just get boosted by the tricks around them, it's sort of the other way, where for the variety, it's purely reliant on the tricks that are going to be in there. So we have this first check to see if it's not vanilla. So switch and rotation, while in the system, the way that these are built, they do technically count as variations, because of the way that I chose to build this system to display all of the variations, which are these purple boxes right here. So like up here, this is the base of the trick. This is the variations that make it different from its pure base, and then this is its landing stance. But yes, so if it has these things, we don't really care about it. But if it's not vanilla, then we can do some things with it. We also check if it's a perfect match, meaning if the trick that came before it has the exact same variations in it, excluding switch and rotation. If these are exactly the same, then we handle that slightly different. Oh, like here's a good example. So if both of these are like, this isn't going to increase the same way that this is going to increase from cork to cork, because you're doing the same, and since this is a twist and a switch, they're ignored anyways, but you could pretend that like this was a shuriken and, you know, a swipe or something like that. Or like here's a better example. Like these are both vanilla, so nothing's happening between them, the same way that it's not a perfect match. We also create a unique variations array just to make sure that we aren't like double checking duplicates, because we don't really care about those nearly as much for this particular case. So, our variety multiplier starts off by like each variation that you get in this, like for each unique variation that you have, you get a 0.75 added to your multiplier. That will increase this variety subtotal down here. We have another check. This probably should be further up above, but it's fine. For is hyperhook, and then we also have a if it has flat spin check. So those are all of the checks and like the setup that we're going to be using for this variety score. So it's pretty similar to the way that our chain score was set up, where there's this multiplier and a point value that we're multiplying, and that's how we get our subtotal that we can then use later on. So if it's not vanilla and not a perfect match, then we increase our multiplier by whatever our current variety multiplier is, which, if you remember from a second ago, is just 0.75 for each variation that we have. So if we have 2 unique variations, that'll be a 1.5 multiplier. That gets a slight boost just because we felt like it needed a little bit more oomph, times the trick point value, and that's just this raw score right here. And the way that this raw score is calculated is by adding up these things. So we have our base plus our variations plus our landing stance point value, and all of those put together give us 2.75. Right now it's not displaying the backside complete point value, but you get some points for that. So, or actually backside complete is 0, but if there was a, where's one that, yeah, so frontside mega has some hidden points that are being applied to this score. Because as you go around the transition, or around the stances, increasing rotation, that increases, obviously, rotation, so more point value, because rotation is valuable. So, that is basically what we're doing, and then we're just doing a similar thing where we're logging that out. We're also checking if it has a flat spin, and what type of trick it is. And for these different cases of, if it's, so the 3 cases that we came up with was it's either an invert trick, it's either a flat spin trick, or it's a kick, like a vert kicking trick. And the 3, let's see, do I have my notes here? I'm pretty sure I drew a picture. Might have been in a different notebook. So the basic idea was that you have, stand by, I am perusing notes because I think, like I swear it's around here. It would be a lot cooler if I could find it in the pile of papers. Yeah, okay. I can't seem to find what I was looking for, but it's fine. So the 3 basic categories that we have was inverts, verts, and flats. And the concept was that to go from a vert to an invert, meaning from like a kicking trick into a cork or vice versa, is more difficult than to go from either of those to a flat spin. And so we wanted a way to where if it's moving from a vert kick to a flat spin, we felt like that should be worth like 1. And then, and these are just like ratios. But then from moving from a flat trick to an invert trick, something like a B twist into a swing cork, that is probably more difficult than a cork because you have this sort of horizontal flat spin axis that you have to correct for in going into the vert swing. Not the invert swing of the cork. It shouldn't be as much as from being a purely rotational like kick into that same vert swing. So from vert to invert would be 2 to the 1 and 1 respectively, using here. Let me just draw an example. I think I have Excalidraw open already. I do. So, here's a better question. Do I have an example already drawn? I don't think I do. Okay, so real quick. So we've got a trick. And let's just do invert. Vert and flast. Invert, vert, and flast. So, our basic idea was that these values are something like this. Okay, so like moving from this vert to a flat would give you a 1, or like not really change anything. But moving from a vert to an invert is going to change something. And so this is the basic concept. So in here we're saying, and this is what gives you, it contributes to your bonus score. So if you're moving from, from flat spin to invert, then you're just getting the point value. Same with flat spin to flat spin, or invert to flat spin. But from a invert to a kick, since we're making this leap from invert down to vert for the kick, we get 2 times our trick point value added to our bonus score. And so that just sort of compounds. The last trick, if it is a hyperhook, or if it, as long as the combo is greater than 4 hits, which I believe includes transitions, meaning that you only have to do 2 tricks, and your 3rd trick could be the finisher move, quote unquote. If it's a hyperhook, you get an extra 20 points. And then whatever the tier level, meaning like how many rotations did you have in your trick, that also gets multiplied by 10 and added in. So, if you did a dub, you get 20 extra bonus points for your finishing move. If you did a trip, you get 30. If you did a quad, you get 40. And yeah. So that is an overview. That's a deep dive on how these scores are being calculated. And then once we have all of these, so this total score is our chain total, meaning all of these chain values that we were talking about calculating earlier. Our bonus score, what we just talked about. Our variety score, what we mentioned before then. All of that, the power score, which is the that trick base score. That's that, you know, the power score of that particular trick. And then, as I mentioned earlier in the stream, the power score plus the variety score is what gets multiplied by this execution average. And if we go look, I'm just pulling this, where is it? So session data scores, I'm updating the execution score, or the execution average, by grabbing all of the people who have rated it in this execution slider. And then those get calculated into that final execution average, which can really affect, you know, the overall point value of a particular trick. Which I want to say, since this is production value, it was somewhere around. Let's go look at the stream and see what it was at before, because I actually had it where I liked it. 43. Yeah, that's good enough. Okay. But yeah, that is what gives us this final score. So that is a full breakdown of, you know, what goes into the power score. So this power score is just each of these base values of a particular trick added together. The variety is, you know, going through and checking if it's vanilla and giving the variety score for each of the, you know, for every variation that you add, you get some more variety score, and that multiplies by whatever the trick's value is, which naturally, the more variations you have, the higher the point value is going to be, and that overall is going to really give you some nice scores. And yes, hopefully you enjoyed this. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I really wanted to mention. I guess I do want to just like go through and then in plain text like explain that, because it was probably a lot to take in, but maybe someone was interested in it. So let's switch over to this. So let's see, I was starting to build this out before I hopped on the stream, but then I figured people might wanna see what's going on, and hopefully I can start doing more of these streams to show people what has been going on in the world of Torque, because like we have been doing things, it's just been behind the scenes, but we definitely have some things to show for it that hopefully the community will start to be able to enjoy. So just pull my notes up. So here we have a total score. So the total score is the chain total, bonus score, variety score, execution average, plus variety score again. And then we also have the power score. And so let's just real quick. So power score is, and I can pull up that code real quick if anyone cares. Down here, this is just I'm just doing the calculation in SQL because why not? Probably wasn't the best way to do it, but it basically is just this base plus landing plus variations equals the total. That's what it's effectively grabbing. So we're not really taking account of the takeoff points. Eventually we may consider like doing an offset to where like if you take off from like an inside mega, but then you only go back to inside mega, instead of getting the inside mega points, you would get the single rotation points. But if you did go all the way from inside mega with a rotation back to backside complete, instead of getting the 0, you should get those extra points. So the system still isn't perfect. It's definitely, more things are being added to it as, we encounter them. But, yeah, so we have our base plus our variations plus our landing. And that's what creates our power score. Our chain total is checking if you didn't break it. And if you didn't, then it increases multiplier by the, what would I call this? By the transition, not the trick, by the transitions multiplier. Because each, am I spelling that right? Yeah. Because each, here, I'll just show you the back end real quick. Let's go into admin land. Maybe might need to re-log in. Stand by. Okay. So, admin land. So this is one of the brains, effectively, of the system. This is all of the different base point values that are used to calculate these scores down the line. So we have all of our bases have some base point value. All of the stances have some point value, and then as we come down, variations have the same. Some of them actually do negative, so they can actually, adding certain variations might detract from your overall point score, which makes sense in the system. But then these transitions, they have their base value, which is their point that gets calculated in with that, overall power score for a combo. But these on the right side that are grayed out are the actual multipliers for each transition that then gets input there. Oh, okay, my stream was just behind on YouTube. That threw me off. For a second, I thought I wasn't sharing the screen that I was explaining about, and that would have been very silly. So, anyways, technical issue taken care of. So, what was I doing? Where was I? We were in chain total, switching back over here. So that's how those scores are, this transition multiplier, where it's derived from. So we increase the multiplier each time by the transitions multiplier, and if it gets dub bonus, which is the greater than or equal to 3.5 score, that's when it gets we still are, like, we've already increased our multiplier, and this is where we are giving it its bonus of that times the comp. If I remember correctly, it is a combination of the full composition score. So like the trick before and after it. Where is that? We were just looking. Oh, this is the wrong file. That's why it's not in there. Ha 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 ha. Okay. So. Right. Yes, the comp subtotal. Oh, and it looks like I mentioned earlier that we were using CompDiff, which is that if you watched the stream earlier, you know. If not, you can ignore that because we're actually just using the subtotal, so just that raw value. So we can ignore. You know, like I said, a lot of this code is still being finalized and could use some cleaning up, but for the most part, this is what's going on. So, anyways, that gets multiplied by our comp subtotal. Which is just our tricks composition score. Let's see, before and after trick composition scores. And then that's what it is. And then if for some reason if we get our dub bonus, we also get our trick point value multiplied by 3. The bonus score gives you if it is a hyperhook or a late round or just mega round. Oops. We are jumping all over this file right now. If it's a hyperhook or a mega round, then in those cases we are lost my train of thought. If it's a hyperhook or a mega round, we get plus 20. Bonus score plus 20. Which like each time we're adding this this bonus score. So this would compound with the this finish score, like this finisher score, which shouldn't really be its own separate thing, but it's like you get a, we'll do it like this. Okay, so for each time we check, you get 10 times whatever your current, or like the last trick's or comp score actually is. Like dup equals 2 trip equals 3, etc. The variety score is checking if you aren't repeating and it's not vanilla. So really we're just saying, like, if you aren't repeating, then we're going to increase variety multiplier is 0.75 for each variation you do. And then the variety multiplier times whatever your point value is what gives us our base variety score. We went over, now that we have variety score, we're understanding how we get our execution average, which we can just also mention that these are user submitted scores between negative 0.5 and so greater than negative 0.5 and less than 1, because it's cumulative. So for like if you get a 1, then you get that. This should actually be like, those are the values, but it's effectively negative 50 to 100%. Okay. And then I let ChatGPT or Notion chat, whatever the hell it is, auto generate a lot of this stuff. Okay. So let's just go over this real quick. See if it covers the explanation. Oh, the other thing we forgot about, what is our bonus score, is gets a plus equal of 1 for flat to let's see, what's the best way to write this out, because there's a lot of different cases. We have flat to round. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about flat to vert, or vert to flat. I mean, flat to vert or vice versa. Let's see. 1 for maybe if we do it like this and we make it bidirectional. 1 for flat vert or flat kick, and then bonus gets a plus equal 2 for flat, no, for vert to kick good way to explain that. And it's for both of these times the point value of whatever trick it is. And this is like, it kind of builds up through the combo as a chain, but not nearly as heavily as a lot of those other things. It just gives a slight little boost for some of them. Okay, so from the top, so the definition of a total score is adding together our chain total, our bonus score, our variety score, and our execution average, plus our power score. Moving through each of these, the chain total, as long as we didn't break it, we increase the multiplier by the transitions multiplier, which each transition has its own bespoke multiplier value. If it gets the special dub bonus, or it effectively anything that gets the dub bonus doesn't have to be a dub. That's just what it started as. But we multiply our value, our trick point value, by 3, and we multiply our multiplier times the comp subtotal, which will contribute to cracking out that chain total. The bonus score checks if it's a hyperhook or a mega round. If it is, it gives it a bonus 20 points. It also checks the last trick, and whatever its value is gives you a bonus of plus 10 as long as it's a dub or higher. You also get a small increment on your bonus score for switching between flat to vert, and even more so from vert to kick. So if you just do purely kicks, you're not going to get that. If you just do purely verts, you're not going to get, inverts, you're not going to do that. But it's, having some kicks and some flat spin and some inverts is going to balance out the variety of those transitions. It's hard to talk about some of these concepts because we never really named them. But it's basically for this chart, the more variety of these types of things, of these categories of tricks that you have in your combo, and moving back and forth between them is going to increase that bonus score heavily. Then we have our final few things. Variety score. As long as you aren't repeating, you get a multiplier of 0.75 for each variation per trick. So for every, let's say you have 3 variations, that's 2.25 is your multiplier. That gets multiplied by the trick. And then and this execution average is continuously updated as more and more users review things. And all of that gets added together. So I am going to stop the stream there and go grab some coffee and maybe chill out for a little bit. I may come back to stream some more of some development of some other things if people care. If you like the video, let me know. If especially the YouTube people, because I'm definitely going to continue to try and stream more and more on Twitch, but yeah, if anybody watched this on YouTube, let me know, and let me know what your thoughts were, how I could improve it and things of that nature. But yeah, Torque is not dead. It has just been very busy with building all of these different pieces of this Trickedex over here, and it's getting to a point where it's almost ready. It's almost ready to have a bunch of users using it. There's more and more features being added every single day. I'm constantly working on this. If you enjoy it and you'd like to contribute to the project, it is open source. But I'm gonna hop off on that note.